And welcome to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the real estate guys, with you. Thank you for joining us here on KCMX and, of course, on our YouTube channel as well. That's Joe Brett sitting over there. We're both real estate brokers with John L. Scott. We get together with you once a week here on the radio and on video to talk about real estate issues surrounding our area. These two ladies here in the middle are great examples of the great guests that we have on, because we're talking about rent control laws, new laws that have happened in our state, and how they affect us, and they're going to affect us, no question about that. So this is Danielle Remley. She's the owner of Sterling West Property Management, been on our show a long time, for many years. How are you doing?
I'm good. How
have
are
you had an absolute crazy week? Since this is how it happened, a couple of weeks now?
It's been an ugly 2 weeks, I will tell you.
Yeah?
Property management has been turned upside down.
Upside down by this. And
Yeah.
I guess there's no going back. I mean,
No.
the clock, the pages have turned.
Yeah.
We're not going back to what it was. Toni Thomson is also here as well. And you both had to put up with this for quite a few days. Do you get a lot of calls right now? Tell me what that's like just in your offices from just people wanting to know what's going on.
Complete chaos.
Yeah?
Yeah. There's quite the buzz. Lots of calls, lots of emails.
Lots of questions.
And do you have answers for everybody?
Yeah.
For the most
Yeah, I
part.
think
That's pretty good.
we're
Yeah.
good.
Well, good for you. Well, what has been this? Why the outrage? I guess in some corners and relief in other corners. I mean, it just depends where you're at and what your point of view is. But I've not quite seen anything quite as contentious as this in a long time. So, tell us, Danielle, what's the reason for it?
I think for property owners, they're just very upset. They feel like their rights have been taken away from their own property. You know, they're not able to make the choices that they feel they should have the right to make.
Okay. All right.
Such as asking somebody to leave because they want their property back.
It's the loss of control of your property kind of thing. Is
Yes.
that driver there?
I think so.
I don't know about that one. I mean, I can understand part of that. Okay, but it's okay. What else is out there driving it? Are tenants, or were tenants out here? Was it a problem? Is it a problem here? I guess. I mean, where did it all stem from? Do you
I
know
feel
that
like
at all?
the whole rental crisis. We've been talking about a rental crisis for years
Long
now.
time, yeah.
Short supply and a lot of demand, right, has driven up the rent prices.
And rent prices certainly went up around our valleys.
And,
we know, didn't
and
they?
our rental crisis is hand in hand with our housing crisis that
Absolutely.
we've seen coming and have now dealt with for years. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we deal with it with legislation like this, apparently. Then.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean that makes sense why they did a rent control. In my opinion, the rent control is the least of the problems in this bill.
Okay, yeah, see, that's what okay. What other ones are there? Rent control. The issues are what? There was rent control itself, how much you can raise rent, how you can evict people or not evict people, and things like that, correct?
Correct.
All right, let's take the first one.
Rent control.
What does that mean? Rent control. What does that mean?
So the new law tells us that we can raise the rent 7% plus the current CPI, which right now is 3.3% every year.
So that would mean, if I hear you right, that a landlord could legally raise the rent by about 10% if they wanted to.
Correct.
When I saw that, I thought 7%. Have you seen rent increases like that here? I hear in Portland, I understand it's different, and I can't change. But have you seen like those kind of rent increases like that here?
Not in Sterling West.
No.
Our owners have not, I wouldn't say on average, haven't been raising the rent 10% a year.
Yeah, okay.
I think some people, what's happened is they've been under rented, house sells, tenants in
Sure.
place, and then it gets doubled.
That's when the problem comes. When
Right.
the house sells, the tenants are there, they've been paying a low rent, we're going to bring it back to market value,
Right.
which is what the landlords are saying we have that right to do as the owners of the property, right?
Not
Right.
anymore.
But not anymore. Okay.
And it seems like at 10% a year, if you did that every year, you'd price yourself right out of your renters and right out
Well,
of your
you
market
couldn't
in
do
a
it.
short,
That's
in a
right.
short
You couldn't
period.
do it.
And we've seen some spikes, and the demand has made had some dynamics certainly on the prices of rent and things like that. But I think we've also seen that locally and statewide top out to where folks
Absolutely.
are saying, "I'm
Absolutely.
out. I can't go
In
that high to
fact,
rent."
The frustration is that we've seen probably the last 6 months where rents have really stabilized and gone down in some cases.
Because the market condition, right? I mean,
Right.
we've talked about this when you've been on before, how the rental market follows the residential housing market
Correct.
so much.
Absolutely.
And we've seen since July anyway, remember the housing market, we've getting back to that normalizing market that we're seeing across the board. So I'm hearing you guys say that's been happening in the rental market as well.
Right.
Wow. See,
Yeah.
that's what's called market forces at work, aren't they? I mean, anyway, that's how the thing works, though.
Yeah.
Okay, but 10% is generally not what you're going to see. You know what it reminds me of, Joe? The 3% creep that you see in property
Right,
taxes,
yeah.
isn't it? 3%, 3%, 3%.
State enacted,
It just
and-
keeps
yeah,
going, and that kind of thing. So no more than 7%, and with the CPI that is adjusted every year. Okay. All right, we see that. You're right. I don't think a lot of people are going to raise rents that much because you're going to price yourself out. You got nothing.
Eventually,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So that one seems to be reasonable.
Yeah, I agree.
Reasonable?
I think
Manageable. Yeah.
Manageable.
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Let's go to the next one. What you got?
So the next one is that they have, after the first year of tenancy, you cannot serve a no-cause notice anymore. So,
Okay. So once you're there a year,
yep. So in the first year, you can serve a 30-day no-cause if you want to.
within the first year,
And then after the first year, your only option to ask a tenant to leave is a for-cause notice. So
is a for-cause notice. Okay. All right. Okay.
the problem
So far, I'm with you.
the problem with a for-cause notice is that the tenant has the right to cure. 14 days to cure.
In other words, if you had a dog violation and it was against the rules, you could remedy the situation first, correct?
Right.
See what we've learned from these two over there. We've learned a lot from you two. You know that. I mean, that's really okay. So for cause, but they could remedy it. That's
Right.
that's the difference. Okay. Do you two see? And you manage a lot of properties now. Do you see a lot of no cause evictions within your realm as property managers?
We used to. Yes.
You did see a lot of
Yeah.
no cause evictions.
Because a for cause is difficult. They are historically difficult. Even if you get as far as a judge, if they don't cure and you get in front of a judge, they side with the tenant most of the time.
Okay.
And so rather than go through all of the headache of a for cause, you give a no cause.
You give it
You
no
know?
cause.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
yeah.
know why? Because they're just hard to prove. You can't
They're
prove.
harder to. So that's what people would do then. I
Right.
see.
Right.
They would just go the no cause route
Right.
Right.
rather than try to prove something or remedy something out to say I don't want this tenant in my property anymore.
What?
That's gone.
Correct.
Okay.
One red flag I see is now we have this different procedure, 120 days and for cause notice. And what if this is a really bad tenant? What if it's a tenant that's really wreaking havoc on other tenants or on the neighborhood? I mean, that seems like all of a sudden you're kind of hamstrung to deal with the problem that those four causes are for. I mean,
It's actually in our benefit if it's a really bad tenant because the for cause will work.
that will,
It's-
you can
It will
load up.
work in-
Yeah,
it will work
They'll
that
give
way.
you
Okay.
plenty of reasons
Right.
to sell.
It's when you're
make
going to
that
sell.
case.
It's when you're going to sell the property to somebody else. Maybe
right.
it's when they
That's
come in and do
difficult.
something else and want to raise the rent or something.
Or if you just have a habitually late payer
Okay,
or
yeah.
just little things that are hard to prove.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
difficulty. So we use this example in our class we did the other day. You walk into a property and you can smell smoke in the unit.
Okay.
But you can't prove that they smoked in the unit.
Right.
Right. So for cause doesn't work because you can't prove it.
You can't prove
I mean, you
that.
can say it smells this way, and then they can argue back and say, well,
Now,
that
if-
must have been someone else.
But does under the new rules, the way I understand them, make sure I'm correct here, that you can still have a no cause eviction after a year, right? If you give them 90 days notice and pay for them to move. Is that part of the deal or not?
That's part of the deal only under very specific circumstances.
There's exceptions to that.
What would those be? Just out of curiosity.
Your rental is being demolished or converted to a non-residential use.
Okay.
If the landlord tends to renovate the property and it's not livable,
Okay.
if the premises is unsafe for occupancy,
But those are it. Mostly.
If the owner plans on moving back into the property, or if they have an immediate family member.
Can move back in, you can no cause evict there. But that's it though, huh?
Well, then that one last one, the tricky one for the real estate agents is if the owner is going to sell the house, once they have an accepted offer,
Okay,
and the buyer is moving into the home as their primary residence.
right.
At that point, with the accepted offer, you can serve a 90-day notice.
Wow. Okay. At that point,
Yes.
that's one of the things that I think buyers and sellers were certainly going to have to be aware of. As I picked up from our meeting on Tuesday, I know you were there as well. Was that particular thing? Agents, if you're buying a house and you have a tenant in there, you have to know a whole lot more than you did before,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
How long has the tenant been there? Is the tenant going to be given 90 days notice if you're doing these things? So it's going to affect your closing dates of
Yes.
your buyers and sellers on your property.
Right.
So that's where, in terms of real estate, it's going to
Yes.
have a big effect. And the thing is, you got to know this stuff. I mean,
Well, you're gonna blow a deal
or
if
you're
you
gonna,
don't.
it's going to blow up
Right.
on you, and you're going to get, and that's not good.
And there's probably some deals in progress that are going to be unintended consequences of this incredibly lightning quick enactment
Yes.
of this legislation. Instead of giving time, people till July 1 maybe, to get their affairs in order, get their properties
Right.
closed, get transactions done. I mean, come on, man. Who misses out something as simple as that and trying to just kind of
Yeah.
run this up? You've got it through the legislature. Let's let the system get prepared for the legislation to be enacted. But
Absolutely.
I mean, you
do
don't
not
even-
get that option.
Do you have the correct documents now to fill out that these new rules cover
Only
under?
the ones we made ourselves.
You made your own up.
Yeah. The forms aren't even done. Nobody has.
They should be done Friday. We'll see.
That's another perfect example of why the cart's way behind the horse there.
Right.
Will you, because of the new rule, will
Jeez.
every new tenant be a month-to-month tenancy for the first year?
We're
That's a good one.
we're in flux. We're not sure.
I would do a month-to-month tenancy for the first year, because if I don't like the tenant or something, I can get rid of them, because if I do a contract after that first year, I'm stuck, right?
Right.
But there's a caveat.
Okay.
So
right. Always a caveat. Right.
for the first year, I tend to think a month to month is the way to go.
Yeah.
For the second year, they did put a provision in this law that says if you're in a lease, your second year, third year, whatever year, and you have violated the agreement 3 times and the correct notices have been given at the correct time with all the hoopla, you can choose to not renew that lease with a 90-day notice. So you basically have 9 months to work with the tenant and decide if you are going to want to rent to them again. And if you've done everything the way you're supposed to do it, which they've made incredibly hard, the notices they've made incredibly hard.
Yeah.
But if you do it right, then that's one more way you can get the tenant out.
Well, we've got a break coming up here, and we're talking with Danielle Remley and Toni Thomson from Sterling West Property Management on Senate Bill 608, how it changes the way landlords and tenants deal with each other, that's for sure. We've got a break coming up here. We're talking about the tenant side for a little bit. Gosh, we don't cover much of it. We just scratched the little surface. There's so much going on
Boy,
with this.
the more we uncover, the more it's not
just
to like.
You go down another route. You start here, we end up over here, but there's so much to it. So we got the real estate show here on KCMX. So don't forget, check out our shows at realestateshoworegon.com, and we're coming right back after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete Belcaster and Joe Brett, the Real Estate Guys, with you. And thanks for joining us here mid-March here. This is beginning, the 3 busiest real estate months of the year, so we're going to see what they go like. Still a lot of demand out there, a lot of activity. I've got people coming from Hawaii this weekend to look at business and also buy a house, which is great.
Boy, haven't you extended your reach?
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
You're
I
all over.
want to go to Hawaii and stay with them when we're done, but we'll see how it goes that day. Today we're talking with Danielle Remley's right here. She's the owner of Sterling West Property Management, and Toni Thomson from Sterling West as well. And of course, when you first came on our show, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now, you only had a handful of properties. You've really grown, haven't you, since then?
We went from about 150-ish to about 500.
Wow. 500. Joe, who does she remind me of as well?
Bookairhop.com.
Bookairhop.com and Daniel Perry, the same thing. you guys have just built your businesses up so much, and you must do it because you're good at it and successful.
Yeah,
because
it works for
otherwise,
people.
it's not going to work.
Right.
So that's great. That's wild.
Yeah. Yes.
You got to have a good staff, don't you? Because how
Amazing.
do you keep straight? How do you keep all that
Well,
straight?
If I didn't have them, I wouldn't be doing it.
You
so.
wouldn't be doing it for sure. But we've been talking about Senate Bill 608, which was passed by the Oregon legislature and put into reality immediately.
Forced into reality.
It's changed the landscape. It changes the landscape. Does it change the playing field?
Well, we don't have any forms for it. We're not sure what all the rules are or how they're going to play out, but
those are all
we're
things
fine.
that,
Everything's fine in Oregon.
gonna be great.
The majority of us think everything is fine and everything's
Yes.
great.
It's great. It's great.
That's how we operate. That's how we roll. Back home.
if anybody can deal with this, I suppose you guys can. I'm glad I don't have to, but that's what I'll say. Okay, let's talk to the tenant side for just a bit. Now, I've heard all sorts of rumors or all sorts of things from people. Tenants are now going to be in control. Tenants now have the upper hand. And I don't know if that's the right word to use, but tell me from the tenant side how this affects them.
I mean, frankly, I don't think it's going to help as much as they think it is.
Okay.
My fear is that owners will now make it a standard 10% rent increase every year when that
Just
wasn't
make
happening
it that
before.
way? Okay.
The other fear we have and we're seeing in Sterling West is a lot of our property owners who only own one or two rental properties say, why would I want to do this anymore? Why would I be in this?
Yeah.
So they're going to pull out, and we're going to have that much less inventory to offer these tenants.
Yeah.
That's the fear.
The fear of that you're going to basically, people who invest in these properties, and let's face it, there are lots of people, I'm sure we all know, people who own 4 and 5, sometimes 1 or 2, but 6 or 7. I know people, 10 or 12
And
properties.
thank goodness we need those housing units.
And they're rental units, and they've been that's how they make their living and their money. So because of it, you see some of them selling then.
Yeah.
You see we're going to have some. So it may increase the inventory out there. Do you think there are other investors out there willing to take up those properties in the future?
Possibly.
Because we get calls all the time, from buyers wanting to buy duplexes, triplexes, etc. So do you see?
Well,
We'll see if those.
Is that possible?
We'll see
Do
if
they
that
know about
phone-
the new laws yet?
Yeah,
Well-
we'll see if that phone keeps ringing, right?
Right.
I was on the phone with a fellow from Santa Cruz, and I said, well, before you go down this road,
Yeah.
do you know that this has happened in Oregon, and
Right.
you need to be aware of it? And I don't know if that's going to affect investors or not. It's going to affect probably institutional, large companies that own lots of rental units. You think more
Right.
so, because they're going to have less control.
Absolutely.
But on the other hand, as you're saying, you can just raise the rent 10%, forget that's what the law says, and forget about it, and all of a sudden, landlord-tenant relationship just kind of goes bad.
Right.
That's not good either.
Not
No,
helpful
it's
for
not.
anybody. It's not.
Okay.
That needs to be a symbiotic relationship
Yeah.
for the benefit of both, and to kind of they're going to be pitted on one side or the other, which is not the way to move forward with anything,
No.
really.
No,
Yeah.
it's not.
All right. What else is on there? Is on that?
What other good news do we have?
What else you got? What else you got
From
to share?
Salem.
We know the month-to-month tenancies. I think that's what you're going to see. So that's good advice, actually. I think for if you only own 1 or 2, is, you need to get. But if you have somebody living there already a year,
Then you're stuck. I mean, there's nothing.
Doesn't matter.
There's nothing you can do. You can.
you're grandfathered in there.
You can try to negotiate. I mean, if the tenant will still, if they're willing to sign another lease, if you want to get them on that second-year lease, you can incentivize it. You can, I'm only going to raise the rent 3% instead of the 10 that I'm entitled to if you are willing to sign a lease. I mean, you can do that kind of thing and try to create that relationship
yeah.
back. But basically, if they don't want to, they don't have to.
What if the tenant decides to leave? Is there trying to get out of the lease even or something like that? Is there a way that can be done, maybe negotiated in to some of this stuff in the future?
Well, if a tenant wants to leave, they only have to give a 30-day notice at any time.
At any time during the deal. Okay.
If they're in a lease, they are bound to the lease.
Okay.
The owner can choose to either charge a lease break fee or make them responsible for the rent until it's re-rented. That hasn't been that much of an issue in our valley
gonna
because
say,
you get it re-rented right away, but that
Okay.
might change now. It might be harder to get it rented.
And we
depends.
want the tenant to leave on their own accord
Yeah, it's
so
Right,
that we can
right.
reset rent prices.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what's going to happen probably if you raise rent.
Right.
Those renters are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
But again, where do they go? What are they going to do? And who's going to rent to them? I have certainly seen a lot of more building going on out. I was out in Twin Creeks this week. A lot of condos, being up there, being built around. So there seems to be some inventory coming on the market. Do you see that
like I
too?
mentioned, was helping the situation already. And these new guys, the new construction, they are not bound to the rent cap. So if you have a certificate of occupancy that is 2004,
Yes.
2000.
or higher, they are not bound to the rent cap law for some reason. We're not sure why.
Which
Doesn't
doesn't make any sense.
Up until when the law was enacted with the signature, correct?
No, even now, that was written into the law that new construction is not bound to this rent cap.
New construction.
Well,
you mean like
certificate of occupancy.
Okay,
So
but like
from 2004 to 2019, they're excluded from that 10%, or the 7 plus the 3.
Isn't that? I don't know why.
It's
We
getting
don't
more
know.
interesting.
I should have asked that. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
And what's the intention of that caveat?
I'm assuming that just to encourage new building, new construction. I guess I really don't know.
New construction for rental purposes?
I guess, yeah. That's all I can figure would be why they would do it.
Well, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
people,
They just sort of
everybody
threw
does
that in
for
there.
different things.
Yeah, I'm trying
Well-
to wrap my head around it.
Yeah.
Well,
So are we.
I'm sure.
We've been
A lot of
trying to
rapid.
the last
We got a
2
lot of
weeks.
rapid to do.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed that you would allow the bill to go out and start it and allow it to take effect without the proper documentations, kinds of things that you as professionals in the industry have to deal with, and leaving thousands and thousands of landlords in the total lurch here about what
Absolutely.
to do or how to change or how to deal with
And
this.
absolutely no education,
Nothing.
nothing. Just here it is.
This is our decree, and this is what you shall do.
Yep.
Is what that goes by. It blows me away, and I'm concerned about that too. Now, listening to you, that people will not, I hope not, take this and start selling off their properties, their rental properties,
Yeah, we hope not either.
because you're going to lose business
Yes.
there,
Yeah.
but the valley's going to lose those important rental
Absolutely.
properties.
Right.
But
And then what's it going to do to the real estate market?
Do they go to the private market? I guess they'd be single family units. You have to buy them, right?
Right.
Double
Right.
up on properties. And I can see it with landlords that have a property or two. They hear all of the noise, and it's really scary. And it
Yeah.
sounds like I've lost my control to control my property. So, you know what? I'm out.
Right.
And I'm not going to dig in and learn the new game or learn the new rules. I'm not. I'm
No.
going to just sell my property. It's got a nice little chunk of equity. And I'm going to be in Arizona watching
Right.
baseball while y'all out there looking for places to live.
Tell me what Danielle and Tony, tell us what the rental market is right today. I mean, as you said, these rents have kind of those increases that we saw. Remember, it was 1% vacancy rates for a while
Long
here.
time, yeah.
What is the market like today that you two see out there in the
Vacancy
area?
rates in the 2.5% range
Okay.
right now, just still very healthy. But what we've noticed is the higher rental prices
Okay.
are not moving. So
Okay. So what to you is a higher rental price?
1,700
Okay.
to
Oh, okay.
2,000.
Oh, okay.
Where
Okay.
last summer, the summer before that, those would go in a minute.
That's really consistent. You know, the property we're looking at in Medford, maybe to be a vacation rental, has languished for a few months, and we had projected, the investor had projected rental market, sustaining itself, and they're right up there about that 1,900, 2,000 range, and really, it's sat for 3 or 4 months, and it's like, there's a change in the game.
Yeah, there is a
So that
change.
corroborates that too,
Definitely.
and that's
Yeah.
what they're thinking about now is to look at other
Do
options.
you still have tons of people at your door wanting 3 and 2s? What is your biggest need right now that you see in the rental market in the valley?
I would say 3.2 still. But we've got a few 3.2s that one's $15.95. That's still a little bit high for a 3.2. People aren't looking at it as much. Our sweet spot is probably about anywhere from 1,000 to 13. People are looking.
That's an affordable.
Yep.
It's an affordable price. That you can do.
Yeah,
Right.
not a
Once
lot
you
of
get above there, then you're right. That's going to
it gets to be too much of your debt to income ratio to
Right.
pay
Right.
your rent.
It
Right.
follows the luxury market and the housing market.
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, we got this 2-year supply of luxury homes out on the market.
Right.
You know, people aren't buying them; they're not renting them.
Right.
Anyway, that's like a double whammy right there.
You got to
really
hunker
bad.
down and live in a really nice house,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
That's the worst.
Well, and if they sit long enough, you know that it's the price. The
Yeah.
price needs to come down.
Yeah. Well, I think. Do you think we will be able to adjust to this? I mean, I think we will. I mean, I it's like everything. Changes you don't want to do when it's forced upon you is the worst change that
Yes,
there is,
right.
and you have no input in the change. It's the worst you can do. But it seems like we will be able to work, within this. I just don't want landlords to worry that people will not invest in these properties in the future.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's why you have professionals, though, because you need people like Danielle and Toni who handle that part of it for you, right?
Right.
I mean, I say this all the time, but I mean, really now with this, I would never try to navigate this
Yeah.
on my own.
Okay.
I really wouldn't. It's the violations and the penalties are pretty steep.
Yes,
And
yes. I mean, like
the-
we're talking like
3 times.
3 times the
times
rent,
rent.
3 times rent, and
And
penalties and
damages.
violations.
Well, and then
Yeah.
the way they wrote it is that the tenant has a year to seek restitution after they find out about the violation. So
After they've
So
moved out and gone, they
if
can
5
even come
years
back
from
to you.
now they find
Yeah.
out something, they can then go pursue it for a year.
Interesting.
Well, that makes me want to be a landlord. That sounds great. Yeah.
Don't you
I
want to
could
buy
look
some
over my
rentals?
shoulder while I'm in retirement, just trying to get a little
Well,
income flow.
Yeah.
The
It's-
answer to Pete's question is yes, we
Yeah.
can get through it.
Yeah.
We can,
Yes.
but
And we will.
you need help.
Yes.
You do need professionals to help guide you through
And
it.
you're going to get to see it from all the angles of all of your owners.
Yes.
You're going to have an experience from the front lines of the
Yes.
field that's going to be really priceless.
It's
Yeah.
a lot more work for us. But
Yeah.
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 Or at a minimum, you better get copies of that bill and start reading it.
And if,
to
and if it
understand
makes sense to you
because-
and you can interpret it and make sense,
Yeah.
come on the show and help us out with that.
I guarantee you, tenants are reading this or
Oh,
reading
yeah.
these
Word
laws.
for word. Yeah.
And,
For
and,
sure.
good landlords better be reading
Yes.
it as well.
Absolutely.
So
Arm yourself with knowledge.
we got a break coming up here on the Real Estate Show. We're with Danielle Remley and Toni Thomson from Sterling West Property Management talking about Senate Bill 608, rent control statewide. It's an interesting topic. We're coming right back. Final segment after this. Welcome back to the Real Estate Show on KCMX News Media 880. Pete and Joe, the real estate guys, with you. Don't forget, check out any of our past shows and our newsletter as well at realestateshowOregon.com. Today we're with Danielle Remley. She's sitting right here. She's the owner of Sterling West Property Management, and Toni Thomson as well as her assistant there. They manage a lot of properties throughout the Rogue Valley, so they've got kind of like the pulse of what in the world is going on with Senate Bill 608. What does that mean for landlords? What does it mean for tenants? What does it mean for the economy of our state and our area? Because the rental market is a big market. Lots of questions, lots of interesting dynamics at play here, and the most interesting of all is that nobody really knows what's going on or how to do it. Right?
It's like a good novel almost.
Yeah.
How's it going to end?
You stay up late at night worrying about that? No.
No.
So tell me what. There's part of it also. We talked about rent, how much you can rent it, these things like this. I've read about relocation costs. That landlords are going to have to pay relocation costs for tenants, etc. Tell me what that's.
In some
just a second.
cases.
Okay.
So after the first year of tenancy, if you use one of those 5 exceptions, you sell the home, you're going to move back into it yourself,
Okay.
you're going to renovate it, one of those 5 exceptions, then if you own 5 or more residential properties, you will have to pay a relocation cost to the tenant, which is equal to 1 month
1 month's
of
rent.
your current rent.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 or fewer, you will be exempt from that.
Okay. Joe, the last time they tried this, it was much draconian than this. It was like 3 months' rent, I think, if I remember it originally a
I
couple
think
of
so,
years
too.
ago.
Yeah, it was.
It was much more there. So that has been
1 month's rent.
1 month's rent to do that. Is that unreasonable? I don't know if that's unreasonable or not. It's certainly,
It's not.
if you're put out by that, by a no-cause eviction like that, maybe,
I would up my
I don't know.
deposits just
Right.
to help cover that.
Well-
I would just find some way. I mean, some way that's got to be passed on. And,
Well, the
and
frustration
cost
with
of
it-
doing business.
I don't think most landlords who are the investor type landlords who have several properties, they don't. That's not a big deal to them. The frustration with it, I think, the big one is when you're selling the property, and you get that accepted offer, and you move forward with your notice.
With your sale,
You're supposed to give them the relocation check at that time.
Oh, okay.
So that's a big sticking point because
Right.
It's way even before the
close.
Right.
closes,
Yeah.
it could
Yeah.
fall
what if the
through.
deal falls?
Right.
Yeah.
The other, you're not going to get that money back.
Right.
No.
The other thing that they've said is that even if the tenant at the time that you serve this notice is behind on rent, you're still expected to give them that
You
check.
still have to give them the money
So
to
that's
move.
a little,
Those
you
are kind
know,
of sticky.
And
those,
you
those
can't
are
take
things.
it out of their deposit. You can't,
you
it's-
can't waive
Yeah.
their rent. You have to physically
Wow.
give them a check. So I think it's just making people mad. Is it really all that unreasonable? Not really.
Do landlords want long-term tenants? I mean,
If they're good tenants,
if they're
yes.
good tenants, you want them to stay, right?
Right.
I mean, so most of this is maybe even moot
Right.
because you want someone to be
right,
there and
right.
For years. And I mean, how many times
And
have we
just-
come across tenants who've been in
Right.
the same place for decades?
long
And
time.
just
Right.
naturally, landlords reward that by not taking the rent up. You got
I
a
was
good
just gonna
tenant
say
taking
that.
care of the property.
I was
That's
just gonna say
that
that.
win-win
that's-
relationship.
Right, and that's what we advise our owners when there's a good tenant. You know, hey, you're going to risk losing them if you raise it.
Yeah.
But
You know?
on the flip side, the owners feel penalized for being nice landlords and not raising the rent all these years.
Yeah.
Because now they're under rented and they have no chance of getting up to market. I mean, it's going to take them, 4 years to get up to market. So I think it's just more of people are just mad that it was forced upon them.
Yeah.
And there's some little funky language that doesn't really work in the real world that we'll just have to try to make work. So I think really when we all start working through it, it's going to be okay, and we'll all. We have to deal with it. So we will.
And you don't want to not do it, landlords. And deal with it because you're going to get caught and it's going to cost you, say, a lot of
Absolutely.
money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not worth it.
No, it's not.
As much as we argue about how we reach decisions and how we get places, once we get there, we got to learn to deal with it. And,
Absolutely.
and you guys can do that. I just wonder how it's going to affect the market. I think that's where that's the big unknown. That's the big unknown right now. I've not talked. You've probably talked to more landlords and tenants than I have, obviously, but it's so new.
Right.
Yeah.
No one's really kind of challenged anything of it yet.
No.
We have,
Everybody's still sort of reeling.
yeah. Well, what does it
from
mean?
Right.
Just to be fair, is there anything our industry, or especially the renters industry, looks at that are positives? That what do we take away that is actually bringing some benefit to
From this law?
folks? Yeah.
There are people who double rent, triple rent.
Yes.
There are
Absolutely.
that absolutely has happened
Right.
and
Yeah.
would continue to happen without this
Sure.
in place.
Right.
So I think that is a positive thing. I've never been that against rent control personally, just from what I've
Because
seen.
there were abuses, especially
Absolutely.
in that
Absolutely.
Portland market.
Portland.
Yeah, is
Yeah.
where the most of the
Yeah.
reaction has come from, and
Yeah.
rightfully so.
So I think that's a good takeaway. The making it harder to ask a tenant to leave has its pros and cons.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there have been a lot of displaced tenants
Absolutely.
who couldn't afford to get, went in when the market, when the rents were lower, and then went back out on the rental market with it doubled, and they absolutely couldn't afford it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
So I understand what the point behind this was.
Sure.
I don't agree with the way they did it, and I don't agree with some of the language in it. Had they done it in a way also where the professionals that are dealing with this
Yes.
were educated and we could all sort of navigate our way through it, it would have been
Or maybe
obviously-
contributed more to the crafting of the
Absolutely.
legislation. That's where it sounds like we
Yeah.
came up a little short, and they're going to have some
Some
obstacles.
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
overcome.
Hopefully, they're going to
Yeah.
look at this again and some of the things that happen in the industry, and you guys will know that maybe to
Can help
change,
them.
to change it
Yeah.
or
Right.
amend it to
Amend it.
to fix certain
To get
things
closer
on
to
it
what-
that
yeah,
might
yeah.
be more acceptable to.
We got to
some.
wait at least 2 years for that.
She
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
yeah. She
Is
said,
that what it was? Two
Yep,
2
2
years. So
years.
they can't even come back in the year during the short session and tweak with it at all then
Right.
as well. Well, I agree with you absolutely. It's the way it was done. No input from the people involved. This is the way it was going to be done, and that's what that's not.
Oh my gosh.
That's not the smart way to do it. I don't agree. I agree. It's not the smart way.
2,000 bills introduced to our legislature. How can you do a decent, credible, righteous job on any of that when you have that flood of stuff coming through? It's just
Absolutely.
This was all.
it shocks me
I
that
know.
it was
But
Sal
this was all-
Escobar when he was on mentioned that number. I was just shocked
Well,
that you
but
try to
this-
take on
okay,
that
but
much.
Joe, this bill was all set before they even got there, long before they came into
yeah.
session.
Oh,
They
yeah.
had it ready to go.
All it
and
needed was the
away
ink
they
from the
go.
governor's pen and the little boy in the tie standing next to her.
They were-
forced out of his rental.
They were not going to take any
Goodbye.
input. They were not going to listen to
No.
anybody. They had it done, and that's the way
First
it was
thing out of the
meant to
gate
be.
said it's done.
That's the
It's
way.
law.
Oh,
It's the law.
So the biggest thing for you though is for if you're selling. Remember now, that's the biggest thing. Look,
Yeah,
if you have a tenant in
really
in a
got it.
home that you're selling, you need to know the rules, and agents need to know the rules as too, and buyers need to be aware of them. You need to make buyers aware of them because it's going to change
Really
the
good
way those
information.
transactions are going to close.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for you two, people need to contact you. Tell me what they should do. What's your advice to folks here as we get out of here? We're almost out of time here.
Well, call us.
Okay.
Call our main line, 541-779-3615. Ask
Okay.
questions. We're happy to help advise you any way we can.
Yeah. Your website is
Rentals.com.
sterlingwestrentals.com.
Yep, correct.
And you have some rentals there right now, so the market
Yep.
there's there.
Yep.
But really, call Danielle or Toni and find out if you have questions about it. And it might be a good time to let professionals take those properties on, so that
Or
way
get
it
professional
relieves you of
advice.
doing that, and your life is better in the end, and they can.
And
Because
we'll
they're good at dealing with it. We're going to say they can deal with it.
We deal with
I never
everyone's
would.
headaches.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for being with us. Gosh, it's great to talk with you guys, and
show.
good luck
Thank
with
you.
it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
not going to go away.
No,
That's
well,
for sure.
in 2 years, we'll be reviewing it
Yeah,
for sure,
yeah.
as the legislature does.
Danielle Remley and Toni Thomson from Sterling West Property Management. That'll do it for the Real Estate Show this week. Have a great week, everybody. For Joe Brett, I'm Pete Belcastro. Have a great week, and God bless you all. We'll see you next week here on the Real Estate Show.